A person who I just mentioned actually on the phone to. I didn't know whether to actually pronounce it or announce him as Robert Powell or Mr. Powell. I don't know why that would be the case. Robert, welcome to the programme today.
Well, thank you.
It's lovely to have you on the show, I must say. You're going to be appearing very soon at the Beccles Public Hall and Theatre. In fact, on the 12th of May, aren't you? And we're going to come back to talking about your celebration of Charles Dickens in just a second. But I don't know if you realise you're actually following Liz Truss. Which is most peculiar. I think I'm going to save up actually to go and see that one. It's got to be well worth 2 and 6pence, I would imagine. But it's worth a lot more to go and see you on the 12th of May, I have to say. Now, a celebration of Charles Dickens. Tell us a little bit about that, if you can.
Well, down the years, there's a little group of people run by a very lovely flautist called Clive Conway. And we have been doing, for 20-odd years, doing recitals usually on a Sunday, when we can virtually guarantee we're not working. And over the years, we've done Dickens, and we've done a program called... we've done Jane Austen, we've done Rudyard Kipling, we've done Debussy, and essentially it started out as two musicians, a flautist and a pianist, and an actress, whoever happened to be available at the time. I mean, there were only 3 or 4 who were, we could, if one was not available, then I would work with somebody else, but that's fine. But then I developed it myself into, because obviously everything got a bit more difficult in the last few years due to COVID and everything. And also I developed a relationship with Cunard, which is glorious because I did some work for them about 10, 12 years ago. I got a call from the Prince's Trust saying that the Prince's Trust was Cunard's charity. Cunard were looking for a voice to when the two ships, Elizabeth and Victoria, were launched, to do all the new DVDs, for the send out onto the database and everything. Would I do it? And I said, yes, of course I will. And obviously my fee would go to the Prince's Trust.
Okay.
So that was fine. I did it. Terrific. Lovely. And about 6 months later, I get a phone call from Cunard saying, we want to thank you for your generosity, and the DVDs work very well. Would you like a cruise? And I said, where to? And they said, wherever you like.
Oh,
and I said, well, where have you got? And this is a little piece of serendipity, because this would be around 2012. The date's important, because I looked at what they had on offer, and Babs and I chose to do a Black Sea cruise. It was in the Mediterranean, and then through, obviously, Istanbul, into the Black Sea, to Sebastopol, Odessa, and it was extraordinary, because we were probably, I don't think there's been a cruise, well, maybe there's been a couple, but since, because obviously Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, I think. And from that day on, obviously, the cruise ships stopped going because they couldn't cope with it. So we very luckily got to see certain things that I think probably it'll be many, many years before ordinary people like us can get to see those things, particularly Crimea.
Yeah.
So we had a great trip. But just before we left, I'm sorry, this is a rambling story.
No, you carry on.
Just before we left, about 2-3 weeks before we left, I got another call from Cunard and saying, Robert, as you're on the ship anyway, and I knew what was coming, would I do a talk? Now, normally speaking, they mean to do a talk about oneself, and I don't really like doing that very much. And I said, well, oddly enough, I do have 3 or 4 subjects that I can do, and they'll take me a bit of editing, obviously, because I have to turn them into one-man shows rather than sharing shows.
Yeah.
And I also have to bring them down to a specific time. They said 45 minutes, and I said, I can't do it in 45 minutes. They're too dense. I said, but I will bring it in just under the hour. And they said, fine, and I did it, and it proved to be a huge success. I think it was a Dickens that I started with. And ever since then, I get invited all the time now by Cunard to go. Babs and I have been around the world. I mean, not on one cruise. I mean, we've circumnavigated South America in a couple of trips, and it's been lovely. And all I have to do is do one of my talks, and I mix them up a bit. So I have to do 2, and I do Charles Dickens and Jane Austen, and then next time they ask me, I say, well, would you want something different? And they said, no, our feedback on those shows is so good. Can you just keep on doing them? So I'm in this wonderful position. They don't pay me, but they give me a wonderful cabin. And I can take Babs, and that's lovely. So we see many, many things around the world that we would never normally have seen. And she enjoys it, and I enjoy it. And so it's been proved extremely mutually beneficial. So it's a nice relationship.
Do you know what, Robert? You're just like me, funnily enough. I used to get invited to parties all the time, and then there was always a kind of a follow-up to that. Will you bring your records along with you as well? Now, funnily enough, Cunard have never asked me to do either, but there you are. Now, listen, you just mentioned Babs. I must just explain that we are talking here to one of Britain's best-loved actors, who is Robert Powell, of course, appearing soon at the Beccles Public Hall. And, he mentioned Babs a couple of times. This is Babs Lord, of course, from Pan's People, isn't it?
Yep.
That's your wife, of course. And I've got to ask, actually, you can pass this on to your wife and maybe ask her. I went out myself, actually, with one of the ladies from Pan's People. Now, this is years ago. I'm happily married now, but it was absolutely years ago. Her name was Sue, and I keep on looking at top
Sue
of the
Menhennick.
pops. Who is it?
Sue Menhennick.
Do you know, I don't recognise that name, I have to say, but it might have been. I don't know.
You have to be careful, because a lot of people call themselves Pan's People. We've had all this before. But in fact, the originals were very few.
Yeah.
They were 6 to begin with. And it was the same crew for 10 years.
Yeah.
And a couple of people have said that they worked for Pan's People, and they didn't, in fact.
Do you know, I think that's the most likely explanation, Robert, to be honest with you.
Because it was, as you know, for 10, 12 years, they were the most iconic dance troupe in the UK.
Of course.
And quite rightly. And, of course, they were on telly every week. Mm-hmm. 52 weeks a year, dancing strutting their stuff, so to speak. Flimsily clad.
Do you know, I didn't notice, Robert, but there you are. I have to say that's probably the most likely explanation, actually, because I can understand a Pan's person going out with Robert Powell. I can't really understand a Pan's person going out with me. So you're probably right, actually. Now, listen, going back to Charles Dickens again, it sounds ever so dry, actually. Is it the most commercially attractive subject? And have you performed this elsewhere, apart from on a Cunard cruise line?
Well, no. I mean, it's a one-man show that I can do really at the drop of a hat. And the key being that I work with a script, so and a lectern, and I know it very well indeed, obviously. But it relaxes the audience when an actor walks on stage without any props or anything and tries to do it from memory. The audience expectation is quite high because they want a performance. So you flip that, and when you walk on with a script and the lectern, their expectation is quite low because they think they're getting a lecture. But in fact, it isn't. I have selected the pieces very carefully because obviously I tell his story of his life, but I use as the props, as the background to it. I use his work. And some of it is great. Most of it is very funny. And that's why I choose to do it, because it's a funny show. It's a light show. It's not dry, even remotely. No.
Oh, okay, that's fine. It doesn't surprise me, of course, because you were Jesus of Nazareth, weren't you? You knew this was going to be coming, didn't you?
50 years ago.
1977 it was, actually. Going to Holby... carry on, go on. I don't want to stop you in your prime.
No, go on.
Well, then you appeared after loads and loads of films and stage shows and the like. All of a sudden you popped up in Holby City. Now, that was a bit of a change for you, wasn't it?
Well, that's an interesting background to that. My agent rang me to say, this was 2004, I think. She rang me, so that's 20 years ago. She rang to say there'd been an inquiry from the BBC to go into Holby City. And my initial reaction was, no, I don't want to do it, because I'd assumed because of who I am and because of the would be to play a consultant or whatever.
So were you concerned about credibility in that role? Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. No, I just didn't want to do a consultant.
Okay.
I thought it would be rather boring and rather obvious. But it suddenly, my agent said, they want you to play a nurse. And I went, a nurse, now. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Because it's so unlikely.
But not these days.
So, well, no, but I went to see them. They were very charming. And I said, can I, and they explained the background to the character and everything. And I said, yeah, can I go home with the character? Can I go back to Salford? Can he be a Salford boy? And they said, yeah, of course he can. So that was crucial, because this is the first time really that I had a Salford accent when I was a kid. You know, how you can't not if you live there. And it was only when I got involved with the BBC in Manchester in Children's Hour and things like that that I self-taught myself to do, just to take it out of my, normal speaking voice.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I go back into it. As soon as I go back up to Manchester, I'm straight back in.
Do you know, it's a bit like my wife, actually. She comes from Essex, and as soon as she goes on the phone to somebody from Essex, she goes back to Essex as well.
Well, so my kids were very funny, you should say that, because I remember quite vividly my father ringing, and we were having a conversation, and Barney, who was quite small, was in the room. And he said, Daddy, why do you put on that funny voice when you talk to Grandpa?
No, I get that, absolutely. I really do.
Well, he had a northern accent, you see, so and as soon as I go back up there, I get out of the car or off the train and go straight back to who I used to be. It is so rapid. And it's great. I don't do it effortlessly. It's more convenient not to have it, but it's great to be able to do it at the drop of a hat.
It's interesting because you've always come over to me as a classical actor, and it's part of your persona almost. You've been in this an awful long time, Robert, haven't you?
60 years.
How many?
60.
I thought you said 6 for a minute. And
60 years. This 2024 is my 60th anniversary of my professional career.
And do you still enjoy it? You still enjoy acting?
It defines me. It's who I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm not. I don't do anything else. I mean, I can write, and I do occasionally do a bit of writing, but it's not. I'm not a writer. And I thought about 30 years ago, or 40. I said to my friends, I said, I probably won't be acting much beyond the age of 40 because I'm going to get bored. So I'll produce or direct or whatever. but in fact, what I am is an actor. It's what I do best.
Indeed. Do you prefer stage or screen, or do you prefer straight or comedy?
No, there's absolutely no criteria. Novelty is what I look for now, because after 60 years, there are very few things I haven't done. I retired from theatre. That I retired 6 years ago. Rather prescient, really, when you consider that I retired just before the COVID. So I wouldn't have been able to work anyway. But I decided, and again, curiously enough, I was on stage. My last professional play was on stage at the Manchester Opera House. So on, I think it was July the 31st, 2016, I turned to a fellow member of the cast and I said, "That's it. I'm not doing it anymore."
That's interesting.
Was it 2016? No, it was 2018, not 2016. 2018, so it's 6 years ago. I just decided that it was causing me. My daughter was warning me. She said, "Dad, you have no idea how stressed you get when you're working." And I said, "Well, it's normal. Actors do get stressed." And she said, "Not like this." And then I had the trigger for me was one of my best friends, who was Tim Pickett-Smith. Mm-hmm. And he died of a heart attack just before an opening night. And his son said it was stress. And he was slightly younger than me, so I thought, no, that's it. I'm not going to go through that anymore.
This is quite
terrifying. First night's terrifying.
This is quite uncanny, Robert, actually, because I am actually going through exactly the same scenario now myself, because this is my penultimate week actually broadcasting. I'm actually going to retire and walk away from radio on May the 2nd, when I have this huge birthday coming up. So I feel I kind of share that feeling for you, and indeed for much of the same reason as well. Listen, Robert, it has been a real pleasure talking to you on the programme today. Once again,
thank you.
Robert Powell is appearing at the Beccles Public Hall and Theatre. He's actually going to be fundraising for the hall, which is a smashing thing to do. And it's Sunday the 12th of May, isn't it, Robert?
And it is Sunday the 12th of May, and it is not dry. I can virtually guarantee, because it's a strange show, because this particular shows I used to do were a couple of hours, because we had an interval and everything, and we had music and all that stuff. But now I'm on my own. I've only got an hour. Well, of course, that's not really suitable. Mostly, they want a bit longer than that. So what we're doing, and they want an interval so they can sell drinks. So what we're doing is I'm doing the show, and then the second half of the show, I'm going to do a Q&A.
Wonderful. Robert, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've seen you so many times on television and like everywhere, to be honest. And to talk to you is just a pleasure. And
thank you.
I really, really hope you enjoy your performance at the Beccles Public Hall on the 12th of May.
I'm sure I will.
And thank you for joining us on the programme today.
No, that's a pleasure.
That's Robert Powell, well-known and best-loved actor, without a doubt. Thank you, Robert.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.